We are in week 6 now. I cannot believe we are nearly a third of the way through the season, and we are starting to get a realistic picture of the IDPs that are truly going to either win our leagues or contribute to losing efforts. We're going to do the IDP 5 again this week. So let's see who is stepping up and who do we need to start thinking about trading or maybe putting on our bench. The IDP 5 week 6 starts now. All right, everybody, you know how we do this. We're going to start with 2 positive, then 2 negative, and then we're going to squeeze in the sleeper that everybody wants to know for this week. And for one of the wins this week, I'm actually going to have to personally take an L here. The first player I'm going to be talking about is the Bengals edge rusher, Sam Hubbard. If you recall last week, I kind of put the Bengals edge rushers on blast. Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson have played less than what they are capable of, and we are seeing the Bengals defense as a whole struggle. And while the Bengals defense still struggled and lost a game that they actually scored 38 points by giving up 41, Sam Hubbard had arguably his best game of the season. Well, it's not even arguable. He did have the best game of his season. He had 9 total tackles and a sack. I believe that partially this is due to the Bengals getting back BJ Hill in the interior. And when the interior defensive line is something that you have to focus on, you're not going to be able to scheme against some of these edge rushers. And while I don't believe that every week Sam Hubbard is going to have a 9 tackle, 1 sack performance, I do believe that when they get healthier on the defensive line, Hubbard is going to have more opportunities for one-on-one. That is a huge deal, not only for fantasy managers, but for Bengals fans as a whole. He had a masterful performance this week. I believe that it may be too soon to get Sam Hubbard back into your lineups. I think we need to see this kind of play out over the next couple of weeks. But I do need to start with the positive and just say, look, I was wrong. Sam Hubbard had a fantastic week. Maybe it's because he's watching these videos just like you are. He's trying to understand what is really going on in IDP. But regardless of whether he did or didn't, we saw him perform, and it needs to be celebrated. Thank you, Sam Hubbard, for fixing, at least partially, the Bengals' defensive line problems. The second player is in the same division, the AFC North. I'm talking about the king of all edge rushers in IDP, TJ Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, he's had a great season. There's not a lot I can say about TJ Watt that we don't already know or think about him. He is the best player at his position in the NFL. There is no age gap for me on how long I will keep him on my team. He's 29 years old, so we're starting to get to a point in dynasty leagues specifically where we need to start thinking, okay, do I need to maximize my position value for him, or do I need to just ride this bad boy to the wheels fall off? Well, I am of the latter camp. You have to ride this wave out. There are not players like TJ Watt anywhere else in the league. And if you do sell him, I believe that you are never going to get back the point production at this position. Now, you might not think that that is a problem because the edge rusher position isn't exactly the focal point of your team. But I will say, when you do have somebody in the top 2 to 3 at a position of any position, it's a distinct advantage over your opponent. Never sell him. If there is a manager that is trying to sell him, buy him. I don't care how old he is. I don't care what the injury history might be. If TJ Watt is on the field, he is arguably the best player on the field, not just edge rusher. He had 8 total tackles, a sack and a half, and a forced fumble last game. It's been pretty much par for the course for him this season. He's a standout at the position. He will continue to be a standout at the position, and we need to appreciate what we have while we have it. I am a Bengals fan. You're seeing the hoodie here, but I can't help but acknowledge the greatness that is TJ Watt, and I am all in on him. If you've got him in Dynasty, keep him. If for some reason and a manager is going to allow you to buy him off of them, you need to take that opportunity and do so. TJ Watt is the second positive guy of the week, and I'm not taking an L on TJ Watt. TJ Watt gives you dubs. The first person that I'm going to have to talk about a little negatively here is Danielle Hunter, the edge rusher of the Houston Texans. I think I speak for all of the IDP community when I say that I'm a bit let down by the production that he's shown us this season. I was extremely, extremely high on him going to the Houston Texans, mostly because he has a credible edge rushing threat alongside him, freeing him up for some one-on-one opportunities to get to the quarterback. And we've seen Danielle Hunter be very successful in those opportunities. But unfortunately, through 5 games, he has just 13 tackles and a sack and a half. Now, that sounds like a decent stat line through 5 games, but when you break it down, you see that 5 of those 13 tackles came in one game, ballooning his tackle average to from 1.5 tackles a game to nearly 3 because of that one game. I think it's a little telling. You need to contextualize what we see. And what I'm currently seeing is Danielle Hunter underperforming for the value that we all thought he was going to be worth. I think he might be, we might as a collective be a little early to move off of him. I don't think that he's a player that we just need to immediately sell and panic sell and try to get anything for him. He's still a very high quality, high caliber player. But it is something that I believe that managers need to start noticing. We need to start looking around. Is he worth putting in my lineup? Edge rushers that aren't getting sacks have to have consistent tackle floors. And Danielle Hunter, for most of his career, has had that. But not only are we seeing the tackles drop off, we're not seeing the sacks at a clip high enough for me to want to risk having him in the lineup. So I don't think we should sell him off. I do believe he needs to sit on the bench for a little bit. We need to see some of the matchups coming up with the Houston Texans and maybe even do some streaming where we go, okay, he's playing against X quarterback or X offensive line, and we need to play him because it's a good matchup. Danielle Hunter is not a player I went into the season thinking I would have to make decisions like that for, but we have to react to what we're seeing in front of us. And what we're seeing from Danielle Hunter is not an effective player on our teams and in our starting lineups. So I'm sorry, Danielle Hunter. I still have hope that we can turn this around, but I think even Texans fans are a bit disappointed by the lack of production we're seeing from a perennial great player. The second player that isn't exactly living up to expectations in fantasy is the interior defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones. Chris Jones fits into the category of Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa for me. He is a name that most NFL fans know. He is the best player on a great team, or at least on his side of the ball for a great team, but he doesn't produce in IDP fantasy football. A lot of times, this is due to the amount of attention that this player gets. But Chris Jones has shown us and NFL fans that it doesn't matter how much you scheme against him, he can get through. This is an arbitrary number, but I do believe if you polled NFL coaches, 80+% of these people would say that Chris Jones is the best interior defensive lineman in all of the NFL. But that does not translate to best interior defensive lineman for fantasy football. He has 11 tackles and 3 sacks, but 2 of those happened in the same game. So again, it's kind of like the argument I just had for Danielle Hunter. We can't have outlier games in the positive. We can have outliers in the negative and not panic. But having outliers in the positive, meaning only 20% of his games I would be considered good, you have to start looking at what you got. The interior defensive line isn't exactly a sexy position to really acquire. It's not a sexy position to even have on your team. And honestly, you don't want to keep too many of these guys as backups. There are a select few people who I would consider at this position non-movable. And Chris Jones, for a little bit, was one of those guys. But I think we're starting to get into the realm where we need to start exploring options. Go after managers in your league that potentially have a hole to fill and try to use that name recognition to your advantage. Chris Jones is a great player. He's going to have great games. The problem I have is how consistently will he have those great games, and is it worth suffering through the bad ones to get to the good ones? There are managers out there who are likely more inclined to take the risk, whether they have better depth at the position, they have a better playoff standing at this point in the year, whatever the case may be. But there will be somebody out there who is willing to bite. You have to cast the rod out, though. You have to put bait on the hook and try to fish him out there and see if there's a manager or a Kansas City fan in your league who might just bite because of the name. But regardless, we have to at least look at what Chris Jones is doing for us and think to ourselves, is this worth the every Sunday roster decision I have to make? Will he score? Won't he score? Do I put somebody in for him? I don't know. Chris Jones on the bench just feels gross. I get it. But you have to do something. We're at a pivotal part of the year where wins are going to start meaning more and more and more to get to those playoff weeks, or as I like to call them, the money weeks. We all know we like to do this for a little cash on the side, right? So Chris Jones is getting into decision-making territory, and the decision I would make, minimally, he's got to be on the bench, but I'm trying to get him off my roster and I'm trying to get anything for him, whether it's a depth fill at another position or a throwaway pick in a draft. But Chris Jones, I'm sorry, man. I think the run is over and I'm willing to let you go. All right, guys, it's time to go over the sleeper, my favorite part of this whole show, identifying who I can pick up on my waiver wire or who I can try to trade for pennies on the dollar to make a huge impact on my team. Many people in IDP know that Alex Singleton of the Denver Broncos not only is one of the best players in IDP, but if you do a full IDP and offensive roster, he's one of the best players in the entire NFL when it comes to fantasy football. Unfortunately, he is gone for the year, but somebody has to step up. Now, just because somebody steps up does not mean that they are going to immediately pick up all of the statistics for this player. A lot of times, teams will look to get those stats in the aggregate, using a combination of people to kind of fill in the role to get the stats associated with the player. Justin Sternad, the inside linebacker who will be taking over for Alex Singleton or has taken over for him recently, has produced quality numbers in the 2 weeks that he has been the man in the middle. Through 2 games, he has 13 tackles and a sack. That doesn't really tickle your fancy maybe because it's kind of going under the radar and it's only a couple of weeks. It's 6.5 tackles and a half sack a game, whatever. But we are seeing not only steady growth in snap count, but steady growth in statistics due to that increase in snap count. The first week, he had a few tackles and a sack, but a lot of times we can be fooled by seeing edge rushers coded as linebackers and getting to the quarterback and then thinking, oh my God, that's my linebacker. Well, Sternad, the next game, not only had more tackles, but he also played more snaps and it was in the middle. And I believe that due to this and due to the injury to Singleton that will sideline him for the year, Sternad has a short-term potential to help you win a league. The Denver Broncos are not going to get less tackles because Alex Singleton is out there. So I believe that the amount of tackles that Singleton is now opening up to this defense not only benefits a Sternad, but also benefits people around the Broncos team. So making sure that you get somebody on the Broncos defense, whether it's a Nick Bonito or anybody else that you feel as though can kind of get some of these tackles, I think Sternad is just as good as any to get because he is essentially free and is likely still on your waivers. So check your waiver wire, see Sternad, Strnad. It's a very hard name to say, and I apologize, sir, if you somehow watch this video and see me butcher your name, but I am pro Sternad. I'm pro him for the rest of this season. And hey, who knows? A guy's getting an opportunity. You never know if he's going to stick. So dynasty managers, I think this is a slam dunk no matter what. Even if you just stash him for the year to build depth through bye weeks and injuries, and even in redraft leagues through the short term, I believe he is a quality starter you can have in your lineup. And until we see the Denver Broncos either sign somebody or bench him, he is going to get the opportunity. And opportunities equal snaps, snaps equal stats, and of course, stats equal points. So Justin Sternad is my sleeper of the week for week 6. Let's go win our leagues. That's it, everybody. That is week 6, my IDP 5. My name is Matthew Montgomery. You can follow me on all socials at MattMontyFF, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, aka Vine in my head. Follow me on there. You're going to get all of these fun videos where we're talking about players like a Zach Bond, who, if we're tuning in, we saw that Devin White just got released. So if you've been watching these videos, you were ahead of the game on that. But I digress. Thank you for watching these again. Follow me for my written content at footballguys.com. I also do some guest spots and videos there. And as always, come to the RPO Football YouTube page and watch these videos the moment they come out on Tuesday nights. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.